Okay, we're recording. Welcome to an information video on your sheet task. I have been checking a few drafts, and it occurs to me that a number of you don't really understand what a sheet task is and what it's looking for. When this was first introduced into the curriculum program, there was a lot of pushback against the sheet task. People thinking, what a waste of time, stupid, rubbish, all that sort of thing. I'm a believer. Oi, stop with all the pages. I'll keep going, but just quieter. I am a big believer. It's all about teaching all of you that you can be a scientist in the future and have an impact on society. It's more about the human aspects of science rather than just the science as itself. So there's a reason why it's called a she task, science as a human endeavour task, is because it's about, unsurprisingly, science as a human endeavour. It's not a chemistry essay. It's not a physics essay, it's not a history essay, it's a science as a human endeavour task. In fact, it doesn't even have to be an essay. It can be an oral, it can be a multimodal presentation, it can be a PowerPoint. To be honest, it can be whatever you want. You could write it backwards on toilet paper and I would still have to accept it. Of course, you need to be able to buy some toilet paper in the first place, but anyway. You should be aiming for the majority of the assignment to be on science as a human endeavour. So 40% of the assignments is put onto technical physics or chemistry. So if you're talking the stage 1 word limit, that's 1,000 words. And you've only got 400 words to talk about technical physics or chemistry. That's not much. It's not much. So you've got to make sure that when you do talk about it, you don't regurgitate the basic stuff from Year 10 science or Stage 1 physics or chemistry. You want to put in, like, you can have a little bit of that, but you really want to spend that time with some theory that's just worth a little bit more, that would take your target audience for Stage 2 or Stage 2, your target audience for Stage 1 or Stage 1. So if you were to hand it to one of your classmates, they would read it and they would learn something from it, beyond what they can learn out of the textbook. What that means is, for your Stage 1s, you can grab the Stage 2 textbook if you're lucky enough to have chosen a topic that happens in there, and you can use a bit of that theory. Come see me, I've got a few spares. You can take a few mobile phone photos, use it and refer to it. For your Stage 2s, a bit more difficult. You're going to have to go online and do a bit of additional research or find some books, like university level chemistry or physics books, to give you a hand. I have some of them too. Come talk to me if you need some help, otherwise just go do your own research. You can only do it online now because we can't go to the library because we'll get the COVID. I must point out that if you're a Stage 1 student and you put Stage 2 content in your essay, in whatever it is you're doing, it's worth buku points. So you get a lot of good grades for that. Now, here's the thing, when we're dealing with the 40% of technical physics or chemistry, making sure that we use that small amount of words to get the best stuff out, one thing that doesn't contribute towards word count is technical diagrams, formulas, data, calculations, all that sort of stuff. I mean, if we're talking physics, physics is full of formulas. Look at the Stage 2 formula sheet. If we're talking chemistry, you can talk chemical formulas. And if we're talking Stage 1 physics, which is nuclear, you can put a transmutation formula in there. Or if you're doing a nuclear reactor that blows up, you can do one for every single bad isotope that causes issues. Those don't contribute to the word count, but they contribute to your mark for overall knowledge, because you're communicating technical physics or chemistry and you're not having to do it by putting all these words in. Now, if you are going to put a technical diagram in there, don't just cram it down into a tiny picture. Say, for example, we were doing Fukushima and you had the diagram of the core open and everything melting down. You don't have it as a tiny little picture in the corner. You expand that image out, especially when there's sort of lines going to different parts of the reactor explaining what is where. If it's a tiny little picture and I can't read it, I'm not going to drag it out for you when I mark it. I'm going to mark the document as you send it to me. So I'm going to ignore it because it doesn't help. You must expand the picture to the point where I can read the relevant information in there. And that's not going to affect your mark as far as the assignment looks. The look of the assignment is not really important. We're interested in the science. On that matter though, if you've got really poor English, and I think a number of you could do with a bit of work in that space, get a Grammarly account. It's free, grammarly.com. You'll get free better language out of it for grammar, free spelling, free better grades, because what you'll find is that a little red underline in Microsoft Word is probably not as effective as Grammarly. The other thing you can do is get your mum or dad to proofread your work, or if you've got an older brother or sister who's done this before, get them to look at it. But make sure that they cut out all those silly errors and bad expression before it hits my desk to mark. Sometimes in some of the drafts I'm reading, I'm like, well, I understand what the person's trying to say, but the way they've written it from an English perspective makes the sentence sound totally different. And that can kind of impede on your grade, because I can't, when you mark these things, I've got to mark on the evidence that I have in my hand. I can't sort of go, hey, Harry, what do you mean by this sentence? Did you actually mean this or that? I'm not going to be able to do that when I'm marking it. I'm going to have to mark it as I read it at the time, in the absence of the person who wrote it. So you've got to make sure you're clear in what you want to say. Hence the need to proofread or get a Grammarly account and get it to help you. Grammarly also does that plagiarism scam too. We'll be using Turnitin, which is a lot more thorough. But that may make sure that you can look through your work and just make sure it doesn't show up. Because if you do have areas that show up in the red and they're not referenced, well, then you can find yourself in trouble for it. And it's not like, if we're all hiding from COVID at home, I might have trouble getting hold of you to make sure, well, did you cheat or not? So for a start, don't plagiarise. The easiest way to copy off the internet is simply to reference it. And don't use too many references either. Make sure your quotes are worthwhile quoting. Don't just give me a general definition of transmutation off Wikipedia. You give me good, meaty quotes of data that you're not going to know normally, and reference that kind of stuff. Now, when you put the technical diagrams, or any other diagram in there for that matter, you can put general diagrams for interest in there. Like if you're doing Chernobyl, sure, go ahead and put a photo of the blown up reactor in there. But if there's diagrams in there that are supposed to contribute to the whatever it is you're doing, you need to refer to it, and you need to specifically refer to it and why it's there. So tell me, what am I looking at? You'd call it like image 1.0, reactor core, control rods, and then give me a sentence on where it's important. Considering the fact that you've only got a minority of the area, it doesn't have to be 40%, it can be 30, or it can be 45. But it's got to be the minority of the word count will be spent on technical physics. So you've got to make sure that the words you have are used for relevant and interesting and high level technical stuff. If you want to save some words, you can use dot points. Nothing wrong with that at all. Remember, this ain't an essay. This is not an essay. It's not a history essay. You don't need an intro, body or conclusion. None of that stuff. You can just launch straight into the technical data. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Because we're not marking it in intro, body, conclusion. We're marking the science. Have a look at the rubric and the assessment design criteria that we're looking at. None of it says intro, body, conclusion. That's not required. So use your 400 words and use them for the really good stuff. And remember, diagrams, formulas, data doesn't form part of the word count. Now, if you are putting data, graphs and examples, you need to reference it with the Harvard system. And on top of that, you probably want to refer to the data, the graph, or the example, or whatever it is you're showing, and say, like, as can be seen in graph 3.0, the following pattern is observed, which means this. You've got to give this kind of stuff a bit of context. Just dumping a whole data table in there with no explanation is not going to help. I'm going to ignore it. You've got to keep asking yourself the question, so what? Why have you put that sentence in there? You might have a really interesting piece of data, but it's got to have context. It's got to be part of the logical flow of the article. You can't just shove some, if I'm talking about reactor detonation or something, and then I say, well, and by the way, were you aware of the fact that on average in a whole lifetime you will swallow 12 spiders while you're sleeping? Of what relevance is that? You've got to link it to your essay. And then take it to the next line. I say, well, this relates to the reactor core, so what? Take it to the next level. Give it additional detail. Who cares? What's next? Why bother? Give it context. So that from when you drop that data, you link it to the topic that you're talking about. On referencing, you must do URLs in there. That's part of it. And you must do an in-text reference. So for every in-text reference, I'll find an entry in the bibliography down below. A bibliography is not a dump of URLs, of website addresses. If you do that, you'll be punished. I would rather you have no bibliography at all than dump a bunch of URLs down the bottom. Every in-text reference should relate to an entry in the bibliography. If I see 15 entries in the bibliography and 5 in-text references, something's wrong there. Okay? So you've got to make sure that every in-text reference you do, whether it's a diagram or a quote, data, or whatever, relates to a line in the bibliography, and there should be one for one. I mean, if you've got one source for multiple references, well, that's fine. But I don't want to see 50 references and 3 in-text references, because the amount of stuff at the end doesn't necessarily make your assignment any better. You've got to make sure that you use the references when you use them. Now, when we're dealing with the technical physics aspects, I want you to really, really bring it home that this is not a history essay. So if you're doing like the Chernobyl incident, a 400-word detailed breakdown of exactly why Chernobyl blew up, that's not going to earn you anything, because that's not technical physics, that's history. If you're going to give me a blow-by-blow description of how the tsunami wiped out Fukushima, that's not a physics essay, that's history. If you're going to explain to me how fluorine-18 was developed many years ago, that's not that's not physics, that's history. And by the way, if you're going to tell me about the chemical separation procedures to get fluorine-18 out of its atomic solution, whatever, that's not physics, that's chemistry. In physics, we give marks for physics, and in chemistry, we give marks for chemistry. In chemistry, we don't give marks for physics, and it's the same vice versa. So you've got to be very, very careful not to spend any of your technical physics or chem time on a subject that's not it. Definitely don't have any bio in there.
Yeah, I'm just spewing on to the Word document.
Thanks. Right, on to CC Dial. Collaboration, communication, development, influence, application, limitation. All this stuff, it's not just a letter. There's additional sort of language associated with it, which is available in the subject outline. You know what I'll do? I'll read it out with sad piano music in the background, stick it up as a podcast. You can listen to it. That language is important because you can copy that language and use it in your essay. Unfortunately, as much as I want to say be succinct, be simplistic, but use advanced, technical stuff, the language that SACES used to describe all this she stuff is really flowery and very verbose and makes it about as clear as mud. But what that does do is leave your she task very open-ended. So you've got a lot of ways to demonstrate CC dial, which is not a huge problem, to be honest. I want to make a point here. Choose one letter and do 2 in-depth examples, or choose 2 letters and do 1 in-depth example of each. You can't have all the letters, because then you'll have too many simplistic examples, and the problem with that is you can't demonstrate your ability to link science to society on an in-depth level. So SACES' preference is that you choose 1 letter and do 2 very in-depth examples of it. Easiest often being collaboration communication, or 2 letters, maybe collaboration communication and a limitation. And you do 1 very in-depth example of both. And we need specific examples, not just, a company and, Japan got together with the United States and built this thing. That's not collaboration and communication, that's just a statement of fact. It's so generic it's not worth anything. To be honest, they're going to attract very low marks if all you're doing is those sort of very generic high-level stuff. You need to be looking at the scientists that are involved with the research groups. If you go to the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation's page on the different neutron instruments that they're using, every instrument has a number of teams that work off it and do a number of different projects, and each of those teams will produce articles on what they're individually researching and who they're collaborating with. So you need to go find out those teams, find out who the scientists are. Every scientist will normally have a photo with a biography page. Go rate all of that kind of information. Put the photo of that person smiling and introduce them. That's the person behind the science which is going to do the science as a human endeavour. They're the ones that are having an impact on society. And that's who we want to know about. So look up your scientists, look up your research groups, and often what you're going to find is these research groups and these scientists, especially if they've achieved some kind of impact on society, are going to have a bit of promotion on them. So they're going to be published in some kind of news article, media, something or other. Dig it up, find out, talk about it. So you have the detailed, specific evidence of how you have the evidence of the letter that you have chosen. So you want to say, well, collaboration and communication. I can see that, this research paper has been produced by the University of New South Wales in conjunction with a university from mainland China. Look at that. You've got two universities from very different countries, very far apart, with two incredibly different languages. And yet they're able to contribute on a scientific level and create new research which might impact the world. I mean, imagine how much information sharing is going on at the moment to try and produce a COVID vaccine. I don't think everyone's doing it in the dark alone. There's a lot of sharing going on right now to try and put a stop to this pandemic. And if the scientists do come up with a vaccine or an antiviral, it's going to work. Well, imagine the impact they're going to have on society. And collaboration and communication is a critical part of that. So you want specific examples which you can reference. Give me some photos of the scientists. Make them big, identify who the scientists are. Don't just put a bunch of smiling people in white coats. Actually identify the individuals that are in there if you can. That's why going to the scientist biography page can be quite useful, because you know it's them. And you put all their academic titles and all their all the post-nominals they have after their names. Now most of these people, because they're doing research science as a career and they're having an impact on society, they're going to produce publications. And we're not talking just an article in the NT News. We're talking reputable scientific journals. As in, we're talking something with a global reach, a trusted global technical scientific journal. It's peer-reviewed, which means that their research is sent to 3 anonymous regarded scientists who go through it and try and fault it. And if it's faulted in any way, it won't be accepted by the journal. But if they say, yep, everything seems in order, it was a really good scientific study, then it gets published. And you can have confidence in the fact that when you read something in a peer-reviewed journal, that it's generally quite trustworthy and very good. And the great thing about peer-reviewed journals is, if they uncover that the scientist has been mucking around with the results or it's just simply not true, they retract the article and they publish that retraction. You see, the scientific community is what's the word for it, self-controlling in terms of its quality assurance. These journals go around the world, everyone reads them online, so it's the sharing of results, which is great for time, effort, saving kind of thing, because you can then just go straight on from what the work that someone else has done and build on it. Go to the next level. Now, if you find those scientific publications, you can write about them in your sheet task. You can say, look, they've done this scientific publication, they've got these people from different universities, because all the authors will be on there. And I think the authors are put in alphabetical name, but also in order of who's academically the most qualified, and it goes down. And they might be from several institutes, so you've got a chance to point that out. You put the title of the paper, often the abstract, as in the very first bit, which normally will be the only bit you can access unless you go through your CDU login from the library. That should have the easy to understand stuff, because that's the hook to grab people. And then all the technical garbage that you or me may not be able to understand. well, that'll all be hidden away in the paper, but that's not necessary. We can just use the juicy goss at the front in the abstract. Go ahead and use it and reference it. Make sure you use quotes and references in these examples of the science groups, the scientists. And when you use an example, it'd be good if you can link science to society while you're doing it. Remember, this is a sheet task. Science, society, science, society, science, society. Science impacting society. For the good or the bad. Hopefully mostly the good. Because that's the whole point of this thing, is to say, well, here's a scientist, here's their research group, and this is how, through CC Dial, they are impacting society with their research. That's what you're trying to show, and you need to be really specific about it. When you're talking about it, you don't leave it up to me to figure out which letter you're talking about. You should be saying, this is an example of development because of the following reasons. And be really obvious. Never leave it up to the teacher to go sifting through your essay to find what evidence there is. You've got to make it really easy to mark. It's like when you do results for a PRAC report. You don't make the results really hard to read and interpret. You make them real easy for the teacher to see, and all the graphs really easy to understand, and you go through it and you analyse it and report on it in a really understandable way, so that it becomes really easy to mark. Remember, you need to be able to hand this, I'm not saying you have to, but you need to be able to hand this to one of your mates in your class, and they should understand it. They should learn something from it. If they read it, they've got no idea what's going on. Well, that's a problem. And I'll pick up on that when I mark it. Try to talk about the impact on a local or global or societal level. So, it doesn't have to be the impact that it's had already, it could be the potential impact. If you found evidence of an impact that it has had, that's great, talk about it. But it could also be, something that this research could lead to. Because not all research immediately produces results. Some things are ongoing. And I want you to highlight that impact in the context of the letter. So if you're talking about the impact of a certain project, and while you're talking about that, you've chosen to do collaboration and communication, then you need to talk about the impact in the context of collaboration and communication. Right. Now, when I'm going to say that when you talk about the impact and in the context, you kind of do that together all at once. Is there anything else I need to cover off on? I'm a bit concerned with some of the, so I've said science and society, it's not a history essay, you don't need an intro body conclusion, you may use dot points. This is not a generic Wikipedia article. I don't want to just read about, in general, fluorine-18 or in general how a nuclear power reactor works. I know all of that. I can go to Wikipedia myself. I don't need you to tell me that. Remember, this is a science as a human endeavour task. That's what it's about. And the thing about what we're looking for is we're not looking for the general information. We're looking for specific information. Specific information on the technical chemistry and physics. Specific information on the CC dial aspect that you've chosen. General information, generic information, steals good words that you could be spending on specific information. And target your assignment. Use every word towards the topic you've chosen from the perspective of either the technical physics or chemistry or the CC dial in the context of what you've chosen to present on. Any words that are spent on fluffing it, making it sound nice, or that sort of thing, well, that's all great, but unless it directly contributes to evidence of technical physics or chemistry or evidence of CC dial, then it's wasted words. So you want to purify it, you want to have it to the point. Now, I've had to be very selective in doing this. I have chosen an A-level Science as a Human Endeavour investigation from physics, a B+ level from chemistry for stage 2, and I've printed them in PDF form. Attached to the back of that is an A-level stage 1, physics, science as a human endeavour task, and finally an annotated article. This is not something I'm going to be requiring of the stage 2s, but the stage 1 students will be required to go find a scientific article from New Scientist, Scientific American, Cosmos, not NT News, not Wikipedia, an actual media article on what they're doing can be related to what they're doing. It doesn't have to be specifically exactly related to the science group that you found, but it just in the area in general. And then you highlight that article for examples of CC dial. And so you have a different colour for collaboration, communication, development, influence, application, limitation. You go through and you highlight each example in that article. Now the example I've given you is a stage 2 level 1, so you don't have to do that, but what you'll see on the side of the stage 2 level 1 is some justification as to why the student thinks that that's an example of influence or develop. And they've used different colours to highlight them. So for you stage 1s, and I'm going to require you to do that with your article, so you've got to find an article that's worthwhile too, you'll just need to do the colours for different letters. And make sure that it's really obviously that letter. Don't try and bend it, because I'm not going to give you the chance to justify it. You're just simply going to have to highlight it and say this is evidence of that letter. That's it. So don't highlight it if it's not obviously evidence of that letter. And the best way to do something like this is to go and find an article roughly around your topic that does have a lot of evidence of CC dial. What we call is CC dial hooks, things that you can hook onto that are exactly those letters. So you need to go and you need to find an article that's got plenty of that stuff. If you find one that's only got 1 or 2 examples, it's not going to be able to give me the evidence to say, yeah, you guys know how to pick through a scientific article and understand and analyse it and go to that next level of understanding where the CC dial exists within that article. So you need to find something that really demonstrates the impact of science in society. Okay, I hope that information is useful. If you go and have a look at the Science as a Human Endeavour tasks that I'm going to put up on Edmodo, then hopefully this will help you to develop something that's a little bit more targeted and at a higher level. Right.